What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Last Principles. I'm your host, M.A. Tonight, I have a confession to make. For the vast majority of the time that I've been processing my experience in the ICOC and doing this channel, I've been very reluctant to use the C word, the word cult, when it comes to describing the ICOC for a couple of reasons. Two of the main ones being it's embarrassing and incriminating. Embarrassing because there's always that stigma that comes with being a cult survivor or the survivor of a high control group, whatever you want to call the ICOC and other groups like it. And listening to other people's stories on different podcast channels, friends of mine, reading articles, things like that, I've come to realize that, it's understandable to be afraid of that stigma, but we don't have to have that stigma. We don't have to be afraid of that stigma because, as I've learned, you don't have to be stupid. You don't have to be gullible. You don't have to be easily manipulated. You don't have to be a sheep. You don't have to be sheeple, as some people would say. You don't have to be any of those things to get caught up in a cult. The people who run any type of high control group or cult, they are very convincing, very manipulative. They are like master manipulators. They have studied psychology, all types of things. And so there's no need to, again, I understand how someone could feel this way. I felt this way too, but there's no need to feel those things because you were in a cult before. I've also had to deal with, like I said, the feeling that it's incriminating, because if you admit to being in a cult, high control group, cult-ish group, anything like that, to some degree, you have to own up to the fact that you were at the very least complicit in some of the things that were going on, if not being completely on board with those things. And I've come to grips with that. I've forgiven myself, given myself some grace with it. I've apologized when able. I will run into friends here and there who I've tried to study the Bible with or tried to invite out to church, and just say, hey, I'm sorry. I didn't know I was doing it at the time, but I tried to indoctrinate you. I tried to pull you into what I didn't realize at the time was a cult, or maybe didn't want to believe at the time was a cult. So yeah, the last hurdle I had to get over with whether or not I would refer to the ICOC as a cult is I think about the people that I still care about, the people who I'm still friends with, who are still there. And I would think, if I call this organization a cult, what does that say about them? And I've made it known this is not my work on this channel is not meant to throw shade at any individual person in the ICOC. It is against the ICOC as an organization itself. So I'm not throwing shade at anybody in particular. I'm not trying to say anything bad about anybody there. I have no beef with any individual person there. But yeah, I would wonder, what would they think of me if I call this church a cult and they're still there? What does that say about them if I call this church a cult and they're still involved with it? What kind of changed my mind with this was I was listening to, I want to say late spring, early summer, I was listening to an episode of the Reclamation podcast. Big shout out to Aldo and the Rec Room. One of his guests that he was interviewing, I forget her name, but she made the comparison she compared the ICOC with a bad relationship. And that really hit me. I started thinking, this is what really got my gears turning about, whether or not I wanted to call the organization a cult. So say I have a friend who is in an abusive relationship, right? If, he or she is in this abusive relationship, I don't stop short of calling it an abusive relationship just because the person in that relationship is my friend, right? My friend being in this relationship does not make it cease to be an abusive relationship. It is what it is. And thinking about it in that context, I'm like, just because these people who I know are in the ICOC, just because these people are my friends, that doesn't make it not a cult, right? And I didn't intend to make this a video about the ICOC being like an abusive relationship, but let's lean into that a little bit. I mean, just like if you got a friend who's being abused, you want them to get out and I wouldn't want my friends who are still in the ICOC to see it for what it is and get out. But getting them out is kind of, it's a sticky situation, just like, we all as ex-members have probably had friends or family members try to get us out, and it's, we don't want to hear it. We think we're in the right, we think we're in the best place we could possibly be, and we just don't want to hear it. It may not always be that, but getting anybody out of a situation like that, whether it's a cult or an abusive relationship, it's hard. And people, whether it's a cult or an abusive relationship, people stay for a myriad of reasons. It's not, as many people would like to say that is never as simple as, oh, well, why don't you just leave? If it was that simple, it wouldn't be an issue. With an abusive relationship, you may be, as the abused person, you might be, that may be all you know. You may have been in a relationship with this person for a very long time, and yeah, that's all you know. That person may have some dirt on you and may be like, hey, well, if you leave me, I'm going to tell your friends or your family about this thing or that thing that you're ashamed of. The person who's abusing you may be your benefactor. They may be the person, for whatever reason, you can't make it on your own, and this person is paying the bills. They're paying the mortgage. They're financing you or whatever. You may be afraid of the person. You may be afraid of what they might do to you if you leave or say anything about it. That person, you might think, hey, if I leave this person, who am I outside of this person? Like, you may have found your worth or your identity in that relationship. So even though it's bad, if you decide to leave, what is there out there after that? Like, that, it's a lot of parallels with that and people who have left or are still in the ICOC. Like, we got gaslighted into thinking that this was our only shot at heaven. So, like, no matter how bad it is, if I leave this, I'm going to hell. We've been in it for so long that, the ICOC was our only family. So we leave that. What do we have? We may have been cut off from our family. Abusive relationships do that too. They cut you off from everybody who cares about you or could possibly get you out of the situation. If you're, with ICOC, it had the same thing happen. We were told to, leave our mother, father, sister, brother, anybody who wasn't on board with what we were doing, to cut them off. Fortunately, some of us, didn't completely cut our family off and were completely shunned by our family because of it, but that happens. So, like, you're like, dang, if I leave, I don't have any family anymore. So tons of parallels between the ICOC and abusive relationships. But again, going back to the reason why I am now comfortable with calling the ICOC a cult, just because my friends are there, people who I care about are there, that does not make the organization not a cult. Just because people I care about are there. And then to take it further, again, I've mentioned so many other people's experiences and stories that I've heard through different podcasts, YouTube channels, articles. Not to, play the cult Olympics here, like, oh, your experience was worse than mine, blah, blah, blah. But yeah, there's a lot of experiences that I've heard that my experience pales in comparison to theirs. Like, people who have, again, cut off from their family, people who have been in arranged marriages with somebody they did not love at all, someone who didn't know them at all, people who have been told, you can't get pregnant yet because you need to lead this ministry for this person who is their turn to get pregnant and have kids. So you need to wait your turn so they can, do the family thing. And then after that, now you're next in line. People who have been convinced they need to go across the ocean on a mission trip with no funding at all, leaving behind their dreams of doing whatever they were dreaming of doing because, oh, you need to go do this for the Lord. And you get over there and you got no money, you got no clothes, no food, you got maybe like a suitcase full of clothes, and now you realize, wait, I don't have any funding for this, and the church isn't actually paying for me to do this, and I thought they were. So many different horror stories, and I mean, if the stories I just gave you don't convince you, if they ain't enough for you, go search them out. Like, tons of different articles, podcasts, channels that I can link you to, and I've heard like the worst stories from there. I'm not going to, spend a lot of time just going down the list, but all of those things that I've heard make me go, you know what? Yeah, no, I don't care how much it's changed. I don't care, how much of a new leaf they've turned. Like, it's still rooted in some toxicity and some false doctrine and so many other horrible things. I'm just like, yeah, no, I'm not. I wouldn't go back, and I have no problem calling it a cult now. Seriously. Despite the fact that I was a part of it, again, I've owned my part of being complicit with a lot of the things that happened. I'm not proud of it, but I'm out of it. And, I'm willing to be here to help anybody else who's come out of it and needs that guidance, needs that ear, needs that confirmation that they're not crazy, all of that. So again, if anybody who is still there that I know and that is watching this, please understand, this ain't aimed at you. I still care about you. I still love you. I will still hang out with you. I will still come celebrate with you. Again, this has never meant to be a bashing of anyone in the organization. That has never been my intent. I do understand the concept of impact over intent. So if you do feel some type of way after watching this video or any of my other videos, I said that. I acknowledge your experience. I acknowledge how it makes you feel. That is it. Again, I just wanted to finally come out and say, I've given in. I am comfortable calling the ICOC a cult now. I may still keep cult conversations with the underscore as the U in there, just as a, I guess, a theme or a joke or whatever. But yeah, I'm comfortable with calling it that. I'm not going to force anybody else to call it that. I just like it took me time to come to grips with it. There's a possibility I may never have come to grips with that. Who knows? But for anybody who I am sharing this with, anybody who I have conversations with, if you don't feel comfortable calling it that, that's cool. That's your prerogative. I'm not going to try to convince you otherwise. Anyway, that is it. You guys have a good night. Please leave me some comments, some likes, some shares. Let me know your stories. Let me know if you got any questions. I have not gotten around to interviewing anybody who has left comments saying they want to be interviewed. My apologies for that. I will definitely get around to that. At the time that I started doing this channel and telling people, hey, I would love to interview you, I already had like a bunch of people lined up to do interviews. So that is my fault. I didn't specify that, but I will get around to people who said they wanted to be interviewed in the comments. So yeah, that'll happen. Again, y'all have a good night, and I'll see y'all at the next video. Peace.